He was the sort of person Carroll O'Connor really loathed. On August 2, 1924, in the Bronx, New York, Carroll O'Connor was born John Carroll O'Connor. He was raised in an Irish-American family that emphasized learning, sharing stories, and following traditions. The Great Depression's economic problems had a big impact on his early life. These events made him very conscious of class, suffering, and how people see the world in different ways, views that he eventually brought to his playing jobs in such a clear way. O'Connor went to Wake Forest University and then the University of Montana. During World War II, he served in the United States Merchant Marine, which was a formative time for him because it taught him about resilience, discipline, and the complexities of human behavior after the war. O'Connor went back to school and eventually got a degree in English. He loved books, language, and how people expressed themselves, so he became a teacher until he found his actual passion, acting. He migrated to Ireland in the 1950s and went to school at University College Dublin. This trip abroad gave him a deep love for theater and performance, and he started acting in plays, which helped him get better at his skill and get ready for the lengthy career that was ahead of him. O'Connor subsequently returned to the United States, where he worked hard in the 1960s to make a name for himself in the entertainment business. He had guest roles on a number of TV shows and supporting roles in Hollywood movies. Some of his best-known roles were in Cleopatra 1963, What Did You Do in the War, Daddy 1966, and Point Blank 1967. These roles showed how flexible he was as an actor because he could effortlessly switch between serious dramatic roles and lighter humorous ones. But even though he was talented, O'Connor didn't get the part that would make him famous until the 1970s. Of course, the character was Archie Bunker in the trailblazing sitcom from 1971 until 1979. All in the Family, Archie Bunker was a working-class man from Queens. He was a character who showed the prejudices, disappointments, and generational differences that were common in American culture at the time. Many actors might not have wanted to play a character with such contentious opinions, but O'Connor took on the challenge. He gave Archie depth, complexity, and even times when he was weak, making sure the character was never a one-dimensional stereotype. Instead, O'Connor's performance made Archie a mirror that showed how America is having trouble with race, gender roles, politics, and cultural change. People may not have agreed with Archie's point of view, but they knew who he was, understood him, and often laughed with him as much as they laughed at him. All in the Family became a cultural phenomenon by openly talking about issues that had rarely, if ever, been talked about on primetime television, such as racism, women's rights, the Vietnam War, and economic injustice. O'Connor won 4 primetime Emmys for his work on the show, making him one of the best actors on TV. He played Archie again in the spin-off series Archie Bunker's Place from 1979 to 1983, which added to his reputation and popularity. Archie Bunker didn't define O'Connor, though. He became famous again in the late 1980s and 1990 Seconds when he played the kind and thoughtful Chief Bill Gillespie in the TV show In the Heat of the Night, which ran from 1988 to 1995. Gillespie was very different from Archie. He changed throughout time, learning, maturing, and adapting to the problems of crime and racial conflict in a small Mississippi town. O'Connor was also a producer and writer for the show, which showed that he was good at more than just acting. His artistic vision helped In the Heat of the Night become a long-running hit that showed off his range as a performer and a leader in the industry. In 1962, while Carroll O'Connor was in Rome working on the epic historical film Cleopatra, which was known for its lavish sets, huge budget overruns, and the stress of filming with stars like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, O'Connor and his wife Nancy Fields O'Connor made a very personal and life-changing choice. They adopted a 6-year-old boy and named him Hugh, which was a very meaningful choice because it commemorated O'Connor's brother, who had died tragically a year previously. This act of adoption showed that the couple cared about others and wanted to provide a child in need a loving home. It also showed how much O'Connor cared about family, even when he was busy with an international film production. The adoption was a turning point in O'Connor's life. It was a time of happiness and sadness as he brought home a child whose name reminded him of a loved one who had died too young. Hugh's father worked in television and movies, which is how Hugh learned about them as he grew up. He got a minor but important job as a courier on the set of Archie Bunker's Place when he was 17. Hugh was able to actively participate in the environment that had molded a lot of his father's life and work through this job, which seemed small. Akiner, who was now a TV star, took his son to work with him on a professional set so they could share the joy and responsibility. This not only strengthened their family ties, but it also taught his son a work ethic and how the entertainment industry works. Akiner even made the character of Officer Lonnie Jameson on In the Heat of the Night just for Hugh, which was more than just helping him with his profession. It was a heartfelt effort to give his son a place to be creative and professional while being protected by a parent who knew the ups and downs of the performing world. This deed showed how much Akiner cared as a dad and mentor, mixing his personal and professional lives in a unique and meaningful way. Sadly, on March 28, 1995, Akiner's son Hugh killed himself following a long and bitter fight with drug addiction. This terrible loss had a huge impact on Akiner as a father and as a public person. The agony of losing a child is incalculable, and for Akiner, it served as an impetus for advocacy and public duty. After Hugh died, Akiner turned his sadness into action by participating in public service announcements for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. He utilized his popularity, position, and personal experience to teach people about the risks of drug usage and the toll addiction takes on people, hoping to save other families the pain he had felt. For the rest of his life, Akiner worked hard to raise awareness about drug addiction. He talked freely about the problems his son had and pushed for help, understanding, and intervention for people who take drugs. This commitment showed incredible strength and turned a personal tragedy into a lifelong goal to help others. It cemented Akiner's status as not only a great actor, but also a devoted father and caring champion. Carroll O'Connor, who is best remembered for his role as Archie Bunker on All in the Family, was never one to hold back when it came to those he didn't like. And how he felt about Rob Reiner, who played his son Michael Meathead Stavik on the program, was no different. Akiner wasn't afraid to show how much he loathed Rob Reiner in interviews and private discussions. He once said, "I've never hated anyone as much as I hated Rob Reiner. This wasn't just a passing inconvenience or a brief clash of personalities." Akiner said that a deep and long-lasting hatred affected his time on the show for years. Their fight was very personal, based on deep differences in temperament, ego, and acting style. "This is not like the usual tensions that happen on a TV set." Akiner said that Reiner's presence and attitude always got in the way of the cast's spirit of working together. Akiner said that part of the problem was how Reiner played his character. He said, "Rob always thought he was smarter than everyone else and that he was morally superior just because he played the liberal son." Akiner was very proud of his work and very concerned about how real his act was. He didn't like how confident of himself Reiner was. It wasn't just Reiner's acting choices that bothered Akiner. He had an air of superiority on set, and he seemed to criticize Akiner without saying anything. He also questioned Akiner's authority and interpretation of Archie Bunker. Akiner often said that Reiner was rude and arrogant, and he said that his co-star's behavior went beyond natural artistic differences and into terrain that felt rude and purposely provocative. He thought Reiner was someone who not only doubted his expertise, but also put the cast and crew's relationships at risk, making the tension impossible to ignore. Akiner's animosity was also fostered by the personal nature of their relationship, or rather the lack thereof. Some performers become great friends with their co-stars, sharing laughs, personal tales, and encouragement. Akiner, on the other hand, found Reiner to be cold and rude. He said, "There was never a time when I thought Rob was my friend. He was always trying to prove something and fighting for my attention in ways that made me tired." Akiner felt alone because he always had to defend not only his character but also his own professional worth against what he thought were Reiner's attacks. He added that their time on set together was tense, uncomfortable, and often aggressive, and that Reiner's behavior made the long days of filming and creative conflicts even more frustrating. But Akiner's hatred wasn't only because he didn't like the other guy. There was also a fight over ideas. Archie Bunker was a complicated person, and Akiner had to be very careful while interpreting him. Reiner's portrayal of his role relied significantly on sarcasm and ideological declaration, which Akiner believed reduced the father-son conflict to a perpetual moral discourse. He once said, "It wasn't about acting, it was about him attempting to teach me the difference between right and wrong, liberal and conservative every day. I'm not a preacher, I'm an actor." Because of their different beliefs, their scenes were especially hard for Akiner, who felt that he had to continually deal with Reiner's desires while yet keeping true to Archie. Even though Akiner felt these things very strongly, he rarely let them show on television. He despised Reiner personally, but he was professional enough to make sure that the tension made their scenes feel more real instead than less real. Ironically, Akiner's dislike of Archie and Michael may have helped create the dramatic chemistry that made their confrontations so interesting for audiences. Akiner himself would probably have seen this as a small consolation, but in private, he never changed his mind. He always said that he hated Reiner more than anyone else. "I've worked with a lot of people I didn't like, but Rob was the worst by far. In the end, Carroll O'Connor's loathing for Rob Reiner was a sign of a complicated, frequently contradictory nature. A man who loved his work, was very protective of his artistic integrity, and wasn't hesitant to stand up to people he didn't like. People saw the friendly, sometimes grumpy Archie Bunker, but behind the scenes, Akiner's relationship with Reiner showed that he and Reiner didn't get along very well, which affected a lot of his time on All in the Family. This anecdote reminds us that famous on-screen partnerships can hide real-life problems that are just as dramatic, even if they aren't as obvious as the manufactured fights that fans love. On June 21, 2001, Carroll O'Connor, the famous actor most known for playing Archie Bunker on All in the Family, died at the age of 76. He died in Culver City, California, which is strongly linked to the entertainment business and was a big part of Akiner's career. A heart attack was the direct cause of his death. This was a sad event that happened because of problems from diabetes that had been going on for a long time. Diabetes is known to have a bad effect on heart health, and it probably made Akiner's heart weaker over time, making him more prone to have a heart attack. His death marked the end of an era in American television. Akiner was a huge presence on screen, bringing depth, humor, and social commentary to the character of Archie Bunker. This role had become a cultural touchstone and a symbol of the complexities of working-class life in America. After he died, Akiner's body was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, a famous cemetery in Los Angeles where many famous people from Hollywood have been laid to rest. Akiner's choice of Westwood showed how big he was in the entertainment business and how much respect he had from his colleagues. A cenotaph remembering Akiner's son Hugh was also put on his gravestone as a very personal and moving memorial. This gesture showed how close Hugh and Akiner were as father and son. Hugh had been a big part of Akiner's life and had adopted him during a very important time in the actor's personal life. The cenotaph was a tribute for Hugh and a sign of Akiner's love for his family. It showed how his personal life and public life were connected. The gravestone, which bears both his personal legacy and the memory of his son, is a permanent tribute to Akiner's life, work, and the love he had for his family.